say that it's an honor for me to intervene after Mario Mauro and Valerio Stoica, both of whom I respect enormously, not to mention that Valerio Stoica is also my boss at the Institute for Popular Studies, so I should make a good impression on him if I want to go well. As a founding member and vice president of the Christian Democratic Foundation, led by Romanian Foreign Minister Teodor Bakunski, it's both easy and pleasant for me, of course, to defend Christian democratic values. Preaching to converts can be a tricky task, but it's certainly leisurely. For indeed, I have no difficulties agreeing with Mario Mauro's book, saying L'Europa sarà cristiana, non sarà. Europe will be Christian or nothing at all. It sounds very much like my hope, doesn't it? Although things thought too long can be no longer thought, as a teacher, as a university teacher, I know that the most basic truth needs to be repeated regularly to new generations. We have for such a long time denied our identity that now we have difficulties recognizing our only common ground as a vision of the world in which Christianity plays a major role, a major part. Marcello Pera, in a book called Perché dobbiamo dirci cristiani, Why Should We Declare Ourselves as Christians, says that Europe is not lacking the soul, Europe is in denial, Europe is not accepting the soul that history has given it, and that has been consolidated for 2,000 years. We celebrate the European Union with great discourses, but we often forget that Europe's founding fathers were not mere technocrats. They were fervent Christians, all of them. For Robert Schuman, Europe meant the achievement of a generalized democracy in the Christian sense of the word. In his De l'Europe, Schuman wrote in the footsteps of Jacques Maritain, democracy owes its very existence to Christianity. It was born on the day man was called upon to achieve during his lifetime the dignity of human being through individual freedom, through the respect for individual rights, and through brotherly love for every man. Never before Christ had such ideas been formulated. The same credo was expressed by the Gasperi, who was quoted earlier by Mario Mauro, in a conference on the idea of Europe held in 1953. How can one conceive of Europe without taking into account Christianity and its brotherly, social, humanitarian teachings? Similar words can be found among Adenauer's speeches if we now want to be complete and to quote all the great representatives of the initial European project. In a text called Unsere Aufgabe, Our Task, a speech from 1950, Adenauer spoke precisely about defending Europe and its Christian culture for the sake of the entire world. And you're right to say that if Europe means nothing, the world will be in great danger too. In a way, we are guaranteed of world democracy. The defense of Christian democratic values thus is indeed now, more than in 1950, our formidable task. Unsere Aufgabe. In times of crisis, popular can very easily veer into populist. And this is all the more likely in an age of mass communication, where giving the impression to be something or sounding well is often more important than what you stand for, what you really are. It is not necessary to go through all the books by Guillermet, Pierre-Henri Taguieff, John Lukács, Paul Taggart, and others to know exactly what populism means. Populism to begin with, and we know the lesson from Mussolini, from Hitler, and from other such characters. Populism flourishes in times of crisis, and we are precisely undergoing one such time of crisis. After the fall of the Berlin Wall in Europe, we would have expected rather the consolidation of the values that contributed to pulling the wall down. And that is precisely Christian democratic values, Christian social values. Well, I'm afraid that after Mani Pulite in Italy, for example, we witnessed rather the rise of populism throughout Europe than the rise of, or the strengthening of the values we believe in, we at this table. I'm afraid that the popular movement perhaps has lost its capacity to have a personalized yet unitary message for each walk of life, for each social category, for each class. And it has left to the populist movements the tendency to occupy the entire political stage, backed by media and backed sometimes, very often, by charismatic leaders who get votes more easily. Populism is built upon resentment, upon fear. We as Christian Democrats believe in the biblical precept, "Non timere," don't fear, non abbiate paura, as Pope John Paul II said. Populism is the rhetoric of fear. It is, as Harold Bloom and Americans called it, the school of resentment. Resentment and fear drive populism, whereas our vision is inspired by generosity. Populism generalizes a message which posits that all political elites are corrupt, that they're all the same, and that power should be given to the masses. La rebellión de las masas, as Ortega y Gasset realized in the 1930s. But masses cannot rule themselves, we know from political theory, and if we are good conservatives, we also think so. Empowering the little man, empowerment is very noble indeed, but it is one of the features of populism. As Christians, we believe in hierarchy. We believe not only in divine hierarchies, we believe in human hierarchies. And therefore, we are more likely, in a conservative way, to accept state hierarchies than populist movements. Our personalism is opposed to any ideas privileging mass and leading towards the creation of a mass society. Mass movements, grassroots movements, whether they be socialist or right-wing, for us are something that makes us rather dubious. Populism is anti-establishment. It is also anti-parliamentarian. And we see that a lot in Romania, where if tomorrow we were to hold a referendum, people would abolish the current parliament, I suppose. Because they think that all politicians are corrupt. People, if asked, would often prefer a charismatic leader, a father, rather than the debates, often discordant and cacophonic, that go on in parliaments. Populism is millenaristic, it is utopian, it is perfectionistic and progressive. But we as Christians know that God's kingdom is not of this world. We have a conservative understanding of the imperfect nature of this world and of its political establishment. And we don't expect heaven on earth, as communism promised to bless us with. And we see the results of it here in this palace which expresses Ceausescu's polemic Hungary. He was a populist too. Populism speculates fear. It revives new types of nationalism, the fear of immigration, regionalism. All these are actually a symptom of closure. And we see that today in the case of Romania, who is repeatedly being held out of Schengen for the sake of populism vote gaining in a few countries in Europe, which is despicable and against European rules and principles. We as Christian Democrats build our vision upon inclusion, on solidarity, upon the founding projects of Adenauer, de Gasperi, Schumann. If they didn't fear to put in common coal and steel, that is to say the two ingredients of making cannons, weapons, right? They put in common war, not just Poland's key. Why do we fear to open the frontiers that are already open to Romanians and Bulgarians? Why do we need constantly to humiliate certain peoples of Europe just to gain a few despicable votes at home? Populism flourishes, ladies and gentlemen, in times of crisis, as I said, because its message is simple, banal. It speaks to the lowest possible understanding level of the population, whereas our message is often too subtle, too articulate, too rich to be given clearly. And both Valery Stoica and Mario Mauro have noticed that. What we need in Dayton is the courage to go ahead. It is following the evangelical exaltation, Noli Epimene, don't fear. We shouldn't fear to dream of a federal Europe, of the United States of Europe, as President Buzek said yesterday. Because if we now fear Europe as a common project, we will go back not only to nationalism, not only to petty little states, including France and Germany, who mean nothing on a global scale, but we will go back to closing borders, to re-establishing the rhetoric of fear, perhaps even to going back to the rhetoric of war. Consequently, the courage to go ahead is what we need more than, and of course, belief in our values. Thank you very much.